Welcome to another episode of Unlocking the Mind Behind Make More, Work Less. Hi, my name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I have the opportunity to help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on Unlocking the Mind, we talk about another cognitive bias, another psychological term, so that we better understand how our minds work, how we make decisions, how we negotiate, how we build relationships, how we take action. And the more we do this, we're able to either be better prepared or avoid certain scenarios that are presented to us. So today, before we get to our main topic, I'm going to ask you a quick question. And that question is, if I was to flip a coin 10 times, and each of these 10 times ends up as tails, what is the most likelihood I'm going to get a heads or tails later on? Well, are you saying it's going to be heads because it has to catch up to all those times it came up tails? Or are you going to say tails because I'm on a hot hand with all these tails? Well, if you pick one or the other because of those two reasons, then you have fallen into our cognitive bias for today. And that is clustering illusion, or better known as gambler's fallacy or hot hand fallacy. And that is where we observe patterns in what are random events, seeing a trend in random events that actually occurs in clusters that are actually random events. The thing is, we as humans love being able to find patterns. In fact, finding patterns is how we survive. It's the basis of how we are comfortable, how we're able to survive for so long. Way back in the day, we found patterns in tracks and food and water, and we go, you know what? That's where a bear is going to be, so let's avoid that area. We find patterns in different scenarios. For instance, if you were to drive to work every single day, and you find that every single time you get to this certain road, there's always a traffic jam, then you know there's a pattern there, and the next time you're going to go a different route. So therefore, we find patterns so that we're able to prepare ourselves. We're able to prevent certain situations that we don't want to face. And that's why patterns are so important, and that's why we're so good at finding these patterns. But sometimes we're so good at finding patterns that we're looking for patterns that's not even there. And that's where this actually comes in. This clustering illusion is where we're actually finding patterns that doesn't even exist because it's all random events. For instance, flipping those coins, it's always going to be 50-50 chance. It doesn't matter if the past performance is going to be all tails or all heads. It's still going to be 50% later on. And that's the whole basis of how casinos work and why people are so addicted to gambling, because they fall into this clustering illusion. They find patterns and claim that there's going to be a hot hand there or a hot number there or something that's cold, and they're not going to bid on that. And that's why gambling is so addictive, because we fall into these patterns that we create in our minds, thinking that there's something actually there. Another thing with regards to clustering illusion is finding clusters in random data to prove a certain point. So for instance, if we were to say a certain restaurant is the best restaurant in the world because there's clusters showing that it has the best food or best taste, best chef, best customer service. But out of all the other clusters that you can find, there's actually clusters saying it's the worst location, or the worst cleanliness, or the worst pricing. But we're not going to ask those questions because we're going to focus on these clusters saying it's the best restaurant because it has the best taste or best chef. And therefore, we're taking certain clusters out of a random bunch of data and using certain clusters that actually appeal to us and work in our favor. But we're not asking the question, well, why is it not the best restaurant? And if you start asking that question, you can get all these other data. This is very common in real estate when we're asking our realtors to do comparables. They will show you comparables to support why a certain property is worth or why it's priced at a certain price point. They find clusters in their data saying, okay, it's going to be worth this much. But you are able to find different clusters to support that it's going to be worth a different amount. So we need to sit there and go, hey, are these numbers, are these clusters representative of what we want to do and what we want to make a decision on? There's been studies done that because of clustering, that certain decisions are actually made based on biases. So for instance, there was these loan officers who was loaning out money to certain individuals. And there was a tendency to reject or disapprove certain loans after a streak of loans being approved. In the same little situation, if there's a whole streak of disapprovals, there's going to be a good approval later on. because they felt that they've taken a risk on so many already, they might want to disapprove one just to balance that feeling out. But we shouldn't be making decisions based on that information. We should be making decisions based on each individual applicant and not because there was a streak of approvals or a streak of disapprovals. So we need to ask those questions. Be a little bit more skeptical when information is provided to us. Why is this person telling us to invest in a certain stock? Or why is this person telling us to invest a certain way based on a certain cluster of information? So we need to be a little bit more skeptical when we're faced with situations like that. We do need to be able to ask more questions. Ask questions as to, well, is there either other data or other statistical information that supports what you're telling me? Or are you basing it all on a small cluster of information that you're only able to provide for me during this period of time? So be skeptical, be able to ask lots of questions, be able to separate yourself and go, hey, am I falling into the traps of cluster illusion? And then make a decision based on that. Now, if you are in fact going to make a decision based on a small cluster or a small sample size of information, then you have to ask yourself, are you willing to take the risk for the potential high reward that this information is going to give you? So you have to make sure that you're being able to assess your risk properly and find out what's the worst that can happen, what's the best case, worst case, and most likely scenario that's going to happen before you make that decision based on a small sample size. And sometimes taking that risk is worth that decision on a small sample size. So just if you are making a decision based on a clustering illusion, make sure that you take the right risk assessments before doing so. Otherwise, separate yourself, ask the questions, and make sure that you have all the right statistical data, and not only statistical data, but accurate data to make that decision. And make sure that it's not and if it's random situations or random occurrences or events, make sure that one or the other thing is not related, and therefore make your decision based on that. So until next time, today is the day to unlock your potential. I'll see you later.